Welcome back to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and alongside me is Mac.
Good evening.
And Gio.
Yo, yo, yo.
And on today's podcast, we are going to be reviewing all the action from this past weekend in the Premier League, and of course, the League Cup Final as well. Before we get into it, don't forget to follow us on our social media, both on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle is @houseof_footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. Lastly, feel free to get in touch with us via email. We love hearing from you guys, and we want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. But let's get straight into it. The League Cup Final took place this weekend. Gio, great result for Man U. I think you were very happy with sort of the result. Going in, I think it was safe to say Man U were favorites to win the game, but it was interesting to see how Newcastle would approach the game. So, Gio, I guess give us a quick rundown of how you saw the game.
Obviously, very, very happy with the result, but I think, going into it, you're going to see how, obviously, Newcastle using a third string keeper, but also still very dangerous. I think, of course, going into it, if we're going to be honest, Newcastle isn't in the same form they were prior to the World Cup. I think the World Cup was the worst thing that could happen to them. And, players like Almiron, players like ASM, even Callum Wilson, haven't been the same since. So, obviously played in Man U's favor because they kind of picked up the pace, post-World Cup as well. I thought Man U played to their strengths very well. To their own strengths, that is, very well. As the numbers show, Newcastle had majority of the possession, but didn't really cause enough trouble for Man U to be far too worried. And Man U, with the offensive threats they had, won the ball in the middle of the field very well to counter. Countered very well when Newcastle were deep into the Man U half, which is exactly what they wanted. They have the tools to counterattack and to counterattack very well. Of course, none of the goals really came from a counter per se, but all in all, a fantastic performance, I'd say.
Yeah, a great point that you made. At the end of the game, you see the stats, and Newcastle had more of the ball. And I don't know if it's fair to say, but it felt like the two goals that Man U scored in the first half, it would have been 6 minutes apart. It felt like a 2-goal knockout that did it for Man U. And though they had more chances overall, I think, in the game, it felt like that was basically where Man U wanted. Newcastle didn't really look like they were going to score, Mac. I'm not sure if you saw it the same way, but even though Newcastle were coming in the second half because they were down wave after wave, it felt like Man U were going to see it out at the end. What did you think, Mac?
I completely agree. In terms of, it seemed like Newcastle were struggling to be able to. Obviously, as Gio has highlighted, they had a lot of possession, but weren't really doing much with it. It seemed like every single time they tried to be able to kind of get into the final third, they really didn't have that final pass, that final moment to be able to create something clinical. A lot of wasted possession from like St. Maximin, Callum Wilson, who had their chances to potentially create something, but kind of just lacked the oomph to be able to do so on that day. But you have to give full credit to Manchester United. I think I was talking about it in our group chat during the game, is that this team potentially is very set up to play the way that they're playing right now is cup football. In regards to, they really, if they can get a quick early goal, they have the capabilities defensively to shut it down. Bringing in the right type of players, for example, Aaron Wan-Bissaka coming in at halftime, phenomenal from the first moment he stepped onto the pitch. Varane, Martinez read the game very, very well. So that first goal was going to be absolutely vital for this game, given the fact that both teams, Manchester United would be very comfortable to be able to sit back and try to play on that counter, and Newcastle recently haven't been able to create enough chances or to score enough goals. So you can see how hang on that razor's edge. So in that 33rd minute goal from Casemiro, kind of really, not to say that it killed the game there, but it put them in a position where they became such heavy favorites given Newcastle's recent run of form. And how Manchester United played afterwards was very I know Gio would be very happy to say this, Mourinho-esque, where they were very comfortable. It's like, oh, we're going to absorb pressure. We're going to lay back as much as possible. Weghorst was supposed to be a striker. He looked more like a defensive midfielder at sometimes, where he was coming in to be able to help out his defenders, which, again, that's what you need to do in these types of competitions. And how football can be really played, should be really played in a lot of ways to kind of make sure that your margin for error is very little. And that's what they did. Even though Newcastle had all that possession, there was never, I felt like, a clear-cut chance where, okay, no, you know what, this is the goal that Newcastle should score. This is the moment they should look back on with regret. So you do want to give kind of discredit to Newcastle on their offensive players, but at the same side, on the other side of the coin, you have to give full credit to Manchester United because they held Newcastle to that. At the same time, still managed to be able to be very prolific offensively, having 10 shots on target, which, with the amount of possession you have, it seemed like every single time, especially after they scored, that they did get the ball, they could create something. So overall, as a Manchester United fan, I know Gio, a lot of the Man U fans out there have to be happy. First title, first trophy since 2017, which is the longest drought since the pre-Ferguson era. So overall, it seems like this is a good building block, a first big leap in the right direction, and a good kind of something in Ten Hag's back pocket if things do go awry in the near future.
Yeah, perfectly said. Now Ten Hag has something to base his work on. There is a trophy within his first season. He's now, you can say, proven, and anything going from now on, he's the main guy. He's the one who, even through all the turmoil that was happening, Brentford early in the season, the whole Ronaldo saga, Gio, it feels like now they're playing for Ten Hag, and I know we're going to talk about it a little bit later about the Arsenals and the Man Cities. It feels like that's how the players reacting to things in the game, they all are now a collective unit, and you can see that from the scenes, from them celebrating. Obviously, like, team morale right now is at all-time high. Even Ericsson with his foot on a cast came onto the field, celebrated. You saw the scenes with Ten Hag and Anthony and who was it? Lisandro Martinez. They were all dancing and celebrating. Great scenes. What next for Man U? Because they are obviously facing West Ham in a couple days, and so that's a quick turnaround. But where do you see now the team moving forward to?
I mean, it's just very positive, like you guys mentioned. I think the key thing is the structure now. The structure. The manager knows what he wants to do, and he is actually, as much as we bash, the Glazers out, things of that nature, he is technically getting backing from them in terms of monetary side of things. To sign players like Anthony, like Lisandro Martinez. So yeah, no, the structure and people who want to play and want to do well, not only for themselves, but for the entire team. Like you saw, Casemiro at the end of the game, after they had already sealed the win, came up to Bruno and said, "Why didn't you pass the ball over there?" It's those things. It's always continually wanting to do well. That's going to take them to the next level. Now, of course, in terms of facing West Ham in a couple of days, I think they do have to take this game. I think they will take this game quite seriously as well. West Ham do have a lot to prove in the season, and they're trying to salvage as much as they can in the season. So, making a deep FA Run Cup, can kind of like be that saving grace with the fans. Although we're not doing too well in the league, if we can somehow salvage, a miracle run and go on and, some way, somehow win an FA Cup, I think the fans would be elated to see that. But obviously, I think Man U are still the favorites here. And again, we'll continually, play on that counterattack style. And I think teams still fear that, knowing, the offensive players that we do have.
Okay, Mac, I think you were mentioning in our group chat, obviously this is one of potentially 4 trophies that Man U could lift at the end of the season. But you made a quick, quite an important point. There should be some priorities on where Man U are sort of looking to win. And I think you said Europa League should be something that they should be prioritizing. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that and why you think that?
Well, their number one priority, 100%, should definitely be in regards to getting to the Champions League next season. It brings a different level of credibility in terms of recruitment, I guess, status, all those things, factors globally that you can get from the Champions League. You can't get really anywhere else. So I think that's 100% should be their priority. Aside from that, let's say they're in the position where if there's a next cup competition, of course, they're both in the FA Cup as well as the Europa League. The Europa League, I think, is the other one that they can really kind of zero in and focus on because, as I said, they are very skilled and set up in a way to be successful in cup football. And it's an easy transition there. And for whatever reason, of course, if they didn't finish in the top four, if the bottom comes out of the season in the Premier League, which I don't think is likely to happen, but potentially could, the Europa League is the other way to, of course, make into the Champions League. And that should be their driving focus because, as I said, it brings so much out to the club. I think, though, what more so, I guess, this is more of a long-term approach, is they found ways to win games. Great. But they haven't found ways to win games and control the game, right? They really much have to rely on, I guess, the lack of talent in some ways in regards to the opposition they're facing. So you could give credit to that. They're so strong defensively. They have a great, fantastic goalkeeper that's able to stop shots that other goalkeepers just going to only be able to dream of. But that is probably not the way to success that Ten Hag does want, and it's probably not the way to be successful continuously year over year in the Premier League. But more suited, like I said, to this cup competition. So I think that in terms of playing mentality wise, they should focus on going forward. And of course, Ten Hag, after a couple more recruitment transfer windows where he's able to bring in more types of players that fit that system, maybe that's something they'll transition towards. But short-term goals, of course, top four, Europa League would be great. And to be honest, if I'm a Man U fan, to get knocked out the FA Cup to like the next round possible, that's cool. That's calm. You should be completely okay with that because you've already got a cup trophy here. Yes, it's great to add more to the cabinet, but I think there's so much more prestige you can get from the other two competitions in some ways, where those really that's the areas you should really focus on, in my opinion. But again, this is but the first kind of major stepping stone, and hopefully a long career for Ten Hag with Man United.
Hey, that's great. I think where you're coming from. Gio may or may not agree with what you mentioned, but hey, like I said, you gotta be in the competitions at the very least, and Man U are in it. Potentially could go 4-4. We'll see how it goes, obviously, throughout the end of the season. But I guess quickly, before we wrap up this game, Gio, I know this is not a league match for Newcastle, but again, another game where they're struggling to score. I'm looking ahead a little bit now. We're going to touch on this a little more as well, but Man City next in the EPL. Having off the back of this result and a couple of games where they're struggling to score, is this a little bit of a worry for Newcastle, or do you think, as I think, Newcastle are actually overachieving? And honestly, a cup performance here in the final, great to be actually in the final, and then a comfortable 6th, 7th place finish for the rest of the season, I think is pretty good for them. What do you think, Gio?
No, I think Newcastle should, definitely have their heads held up high. Again, I think we can all agree that they've overachieved. We've bigged up this club from the very beginning. Signing very key players. And you can tell that they're overperforming. A guy like Al Magad that we've been calling him. He's been ice cold really since the World Cup break has ended. But that type of consistency, knowing the level they have to bring week in, week out for the Prem, and then not having a World Cup break next year, I think will do them justice. So I think they should work hard in terms of getting European football, whether it be Europa League, whether it be Champions League. I think it will be huge for their club financially. Not that they really need it, due to their backing, but it'll do the fan base. It'll do the fan base a lot of justice. So you just got to give it up to them. Hopefully they continue to play well. Or I know Eddie Howe kind of made that. He put up. Apparently there's a screen where players walk by every day going into training.
Right.
It said trophyless in like however many years. I think it was like 67 or something like that. Like
decades for sure.
Yeah, decades. So that type of motivation, to have that type of coach to kind of drill in like success into your mind or wanting success in your mind, I think they're in a very good spot.
Okay, yeah, for sure. We'll see how they do. Commiserations for Newcastle, but obviously, one player that will be happy in the Newcastle team is Martin Dubravka, who, with that result, obviously gets a AFL Cup medal. So, on that point, let's move on to some Premier League action. Man City was in action this weekend at home to Bournemouth, and they were able to win 4-1. It was 4-0 after 51 minutes, and Man City, I don't know if it's what it is, but it looked like they were back to their old selves. A couple mistakes from Bournemouth obviously helped, but hey, it looked like from my end, Haaland, Julian Alvarez, Foden, Gundogan, all of them were firing on at top level. What did you think of this game, Mac?
This is definitely stereotypical in terms of Man City. They coming off of any drop points position, even if off the Champions League, they're going to come back out with kind of a headstrong performance, and that's what they did through in this entire match. It seemed from the onset there was only one team really going to win. Manchester City have kind of this level of performance where they can kick it into a certain gear if they so choose, and this is one of the situations that they did. It was great to see Foden come back into the team and start and have a really good impact. Of course, he did play midweek, but kind of made some mistakes here and there, as well as in the recent matchups. But I think this is one of the fewer games where he was really able to show out, be able to create, get on the ball a lot, be able to kind of give that extra pass. There's a couple times, I think in the same sequence between him and, oh my God, the kid right back, Ray, you got me this
Rico Lewis?
Yes, Rico Lewis. A couple times those two were just keeping between themselves, and he set Rico Lewis through a couple times on the right-hand side, kind of a la KDB runs in a couple different situations. So his fingerprints were all over this game, which I think if you're Pep is probably the biggest part aside from the 3 points, where you can be able to get a performance at that like Foden, because he's been of course slowly coming back into the team after taking a little bit of break. As Pep said, he wasn't kind of physically ready to be able to compete, but good to see him back in. And the crazy part about this is that all of this was done without KDB, who was comfortably sitting his ass on the bench and resting. So it's all check marks in regards to City and how they played this game. I think one aspect though that does leave me asking some questions. I know Haaland did break the single season Premier League record for Man City in terms of goal scoring with this 20. I think is it 27th goal? If I remember correctly, yeah. 27th goal. The interesting part though is I was listening to Thierry Henry talk about his movement inside the box, where you understand exactly the type of run he's always going to make. He's always going to be able to make that exact same type of run. And he's dictating and demanding, no, you will adjust to me. And he's saying the next level he has to really understand is different players are going to want to be able to deliver you a ball different ways. So instead of making them adjust to you, you have to adjust to them and kind of adapt to your play capability. So even though he did get on the score sheet, he's been in not the greatest run of form, which is scary to say considering he has 27 goals already this season. And in this game as well, there was a couple opportunities where you could see he was like, oh no, I'm going to make that run to that far post. Someone's going to give me, like Rico Lewis in a couple of those situations, is going to be able to hit me directly like KDB does. But sorry, Rico Lewis, you're not KDB. That's not going to happen. So Haaland, you have to make adjustments and kind of cater your playing style to what those players are performing around you. So even though, yes, a lot of positives, a lot of credit to Man City, I still think that the scary part is, and what we talked about a lot this season, they haven't reached their final form yet.
Final form. That's interesting you mentioned that. Gio, you mentioned here City are obviously performing well. As Mac mentioned, Haaland did break the single season scoring record for City in the Premier League. Long may continue because he is in my fantasy team. But other questions, Gio, with them performing perhaps against the bigger clubs? Obviously, they were looking like they're back to their best in this game, but obviously they need to continue that run of form against all teams they play across the Premier League to catch Arsenal, and that is if Arsenal drop points, because obviously they were winners against Leicester this past weekend. Are there any questions from Man City, or what do you sort of see from this performance where City are at?
I think there's always questions. I think the biggest question is, how many times are we going to see Pep kind of overthink his process again? And that's usually the case, right? We always revert back to it. Why is he switching from, a three in the back, from a regular four in the back that he's so capable of dominating the game with. Let the bad teams or let the other teams adjust to you, right? And I think that's what a lot of good teams, based on their depth, kind of play around with. You are good, let them adjust to you. Play your game. They, at the end of the day, fear you more than you should fear them. And I think that's the mentality that they have to go in with for the rest of the season and just stick to what has won them, Premier Leagues year and year again. So I think, as long as we don't see Pep sort of, overthinking it and, switching up the lineup far too much, then we can definitely see a good title race till the end of the season.
I think we definitely will. Just quickly before we wrap up this part of the podcast, I just wanted to point out Phil Foden, who was on the score sheet for this game. Apparently, it was his 200th game for Manchester City. He's turning 23 this year, and obviously he popped up on the right side of that front three in this game and took on that Mars role, and I think performed it quite well. And that just gives you an example after a couple of weeks missing from the team, the ability that he has, the talent, and even the versatility that he has to not only play maybe in the middle of that midfield, even on the left-hand side where Grealish is now sort of occupying more so this season. The ability for him to pop up in different parts of the field. And in this game, he took his goal well. He looked sharp and created a lot of chances for City. So I just wanted to mention that stood out for me. And we'll see. There are obviously questions with them conceding so late in this game, and it's a constant theme. But I'm sure, like Gio said, Pep just has to figure it out and let teams try to come at them rather than him before the game trying to figure other teams out, because the quality of players that they have across the pitch against most teams in the Premier League and any other teams in Europe, you should be able to beat them in the game. So, guys, we're going to take a quick break here, and then we'll be back with some more Premier League football to talk about. Welcome back to House of Footy, guys. We are going to continue our podcast discussing the Premier League action from this past weekend. The next game we're going to cover is Tottenham 2, Chelsea 0. Mac, it's fair to say that the Blues are down bad. And Gio said here, like bad. Obviously, after another loss in the Premier League, not being able to score, obviously questions about team selection, and now more so the manager. What was your take overall on this game? And I think you have some stats that you want to read up for us, so give it to us.
Absolutely. So this is as there's not really a nice way to be able to put it, but this might be as piss poor a Chelsea team have we seen kind of ever from what I can remember in terms of how they performed, as well as the amount of money that's been put into this team. It's absurd. I know that everyone's going to look at that. How do you spend so much money per goal? And I'm very curious to see it. Well, I'll be interested to see to pull up that number actually, but I don't have that ready. But the reason why this is pathetic and kind of as bad as it's been is that Tottenham, in regards to their performance against Chelsea thus far, in quite some time, they've actually not won a game against Chelsea since November of 2018. So they've drawn 2 and lost 6. So you're playing against a team, your rival, a team that you've historically dominated. Frank Lampard dubbed their home stadium as 3-point lane, and you lose against them. In addition, Chelsea have only scored 6 goals across the 12 games in the Premier League since November, since the start of November, right? And that's the last place in the Premier League in that time period. So you're telling me, as of right now, teams like Wolves, well, even prior to this game, West Ham, Bournemouth, Southampton, all have scored more goals than you in that time period. That's how poor you have been thus far. And just in 2023, they've only scored 4 goals and won 1 game. So this is as low or as down bad, as you would say, as they can be. And I want to really try to be like, Tottenham, Spurs, you guys are doing well. This is fantastic. 2 wins in a row kind of thing. This is a consistency we've seen never from you guys before. This is fantastic. But you can't even go there because you just have to look at Chelsea and be like, you guys are absolute trash. We can't give any positives to Tottenham. We can try, I think will make maybe a little bit of an effort. Maybe I don't know if Gio will, but Chelsea definitely like this is bad, and I am quite surprised that as of time of recording, Graham Potter still has a job, because I thought this would be the final straw. Because again, like I said, this is a team you dominate, but you were flat, really didn't show anything. Fraser Forster looked bored in net. They're playing against a backup goalkeeper for Spurs, and I think you've maybe tested him once or twice, really. So I don't know. It's pathetic.
Hey, Mac obviously has very strong opinions, Gio. I'm gonna quickly jump in and say, obviously Tottenham are still in the top four race, and so based on positions that they are in the table, I don't know, making a case, Chelsea loss might have been just expected, kind of. I don't know. It's kind of bad to say, but Gio, do you have such fiery opinions as Mac just mentioned, or do you have a different take on this result?
Look, I've been there before. Just a couple years back, actually. Man, you couldn't get any worse. It did. It got worse. We had to play in the Conference League, I believe. Was that even a thing?
Ooh.
Did he play in the Conference League?
No, you guys didn't play in the Conference League.
Oh, thank goodness.
This was pre-Conference League. Your fear was entering the Conference League.
Okay, fear was Conference League. But no, I think just to sort of like, I hate to echo what Max said, but they're just really bad. They are really like, you sign all these defenders, and for what? And just poor clearances. You can tell the players are frustrated. I think when it's kind of good to see some frustration from players. But what I think one play in mind kind of stuck very heavily with me is that Joao Felix got the ball in the middle of the pitch, well, in front of the box, and Raheem Sterling kind of made a run for him. But not every player can make that pass. That pass that he expected him to, thread a needle through, and then he wanted to throw his arms up after he put a great shot on target. Hey, you guys are both really bad. Well, Joao Felix is quite a bit better than you. So I just need you to calm down, buddy. It's a team effort, but you're not really being a team player right now.
Yeah, I have to say the only bright spot was Joao Felix. Just looking at where the chances were coming from, who was actually looking most likely to score. I think Sterling may have had a chance or two in the game as well, but again, no goal scored for Chelsea, and I think maybe something that's even worse is Thiago Silva left the pitch early in the game with an injury. Looks set to miss at least a week. Wesley Fofana came on, but wasn't much improvement. The first goal, obviously you can't do much. Great finish by Oliver Skipp, but second goal, backdoor run, set piece by Harry Kane, who will always find himself in the box, and set pieces, at least, if your team is not doing well offensively, make sure that you guys are not conceding, and they keep conceding, especially in ways where you could have made a difference, and so that just compounds sort of the results and how bad it's going for Chelsea. But I guess Gio, I'm not sure if you had a take on this, but I was a little confused about that red card incident with Hakim Ziyech at the end of the first half, I believe.
Yeah,
it was given a red, then it was rescinded, given a yellow. I don't understand. I thought if it's given a red, it should have stayed a red. But did you have a different take on it?
Wasn't it a straight red at that?
That's what I thought. It was a straight red, right?
It was a straight red, but then VAR can review it, depending, and if they think it's an incorrect call, recommend to be able to go back and give him a yellow instead, which is what happened.
I don't think that foul warranted a red. I think Emerson obviously was very, could have won an Oscar. But
yeah.
No, actually, he couldn't even win an Oscar. That was such a piss poor performance. But no, I think it was a right call. I think you don't want. Look, I think this is a good thing for Chelsea fans because it's clear as day as the team is bad. You don't want to give the team another excuse. Oh yeah, they were playing down a man for the second half. Oh yeah, they lost. Whatever. But they got away with one. Came back out in the second half. Maybe they would have fired the team up. Oh yeah, the cards are stacked against us, boys. Let's go out there and try to put a show on, and just prove to the fans that we're here to perform. We're professionals and we want to win just as much as you guys want to see us win. But it didn't happen. So no, I think it was the right call to go back and use VAR to their advantage, and make a correct call.
Fair. Mac, you had, I guess, the same thoughts as Gio, or do you see it a different way?
So I think I agree that definitely was a yellow. Emerson Royale. To be honest, if he punched Emerson Royale, I would still be okay with it being a yellow because it's Emerson Royale. Who cares? But again, it's a little bit unfortunate. But at that moment, I thought it could be interesting that it might light a spark under Chelsea. However, it was a poor response from them because it was 15 seconds, I think it was 16 seconds into the second half before Oliver Skip ended up scoring. So you come out just before the end of the break, tensions are high, you should be ready to go, hoorah, ready to fight, stick in, compete, and you concede in the first 20 seconds. So it seems like there's a lot of questions going there. And it kind of goes back to, because he was a player that was supposed to be exited in the January transfer window. They just signed the documents later or whatever, right? And now he's playing game in, game out, and starting on that right wing side. I don't understand the plan. But again, for that individual play, I understand why I was given back. I do agree it was just a yellow. I know, Ray, you would have loved to see a red. That's your type of thing, I guess.
Cards, bring it on. The more the better.
But I feel bad for Ziyech. He's probably just angry that he's still there.
That's fair. And again, poor result from Chelsea. Great result again, back-to-back wins for Spurs. I think this is their fourth game without Conte, and they've won again. So, I mean, is it Conte not being there? The players are able to perform a little bit better with less pressure. Who knows? But we'll see if they can continue this run of form. But I guess let's move on to another game that we're going to cover now. Liverpool 0, Crystal Palace 0. Gio, to be fair, overall, there were a couple chances here and there. Crossbars were hit on both sides of the pitch by both teams, but in the end, was it a fair 0-0 result?
This couldn't be a more fair draw that I've ever watched in my life. Both teams just weren't clinical enough. Mo Salah had great chances. The type of goals you see him score when he was, the top scorer of the league or joint top scorer of the league. Just those breakaways, he loves to pull them out a little wider and cut back onto his left foot and kind of curl it in. But he had those chances, but just couldn't put them away. Hit the crossbar, but they didn't look horrible. They looked like typical Liverpool, and by typical Liverpool, I mean the back line obviously was kind of letting the team down. And yeah, I mean, you saw the rust in Naby Keita, who doesn't usually get all that many minutes. Clumsy fouls here and there. But again, it's it's just the same old story every single week. It's what type of mistake does the back line do to cause Liverpool to concede? They got away with one with Trent passed it backwards, and obviously was a through ball for Crystal Palace. Very fortunate there that it wasn't a better striker, but. No, I think
exactly.
It was just a tough week. I think you guys should be very happy with the draw at this point. Again, to repeat myself, the fairest draw that I've seen.
Hey, totally agree with that. It wouldn't be a Liverpool game without a Trent Alexander-Arnold no-look back pass putting the opposition player through. But Mac, I know that you are itching to give us some thoughts about that. So what did you think about that game?
I don't. Neither team. I feel like both teams should have lost, but neither team should have won. If that makes sense, because they both weren't very great. Crystal Palace are winless in their last 8 Premier League games, 5 draws, 3 wins, the longest run in the competition right now. So they haven't been in the greatest run of form. So it's in Liverpool. You're like, okay, so maybe we can take advantage of them, especially because my apologies, that Liverpool have won away to Crystal Palace every year since 2014-15 in the Premier League. So this is generally a home, even though we may have the perspective that it's a tough place to go to. Liverpool haven't found it that way. So, but Crystal Palace didn't do enough. If your starting strikers are Mateta with Ayew behind him, you're really not. You should expect not to score going into games. In my opinion, their only interesting option was Elise, and that's the only part of the pitch I really felt like Crystal Palace had to worry about if Liverpool weren't going to shoot themselves in the foot. So I completely agree in terms of what you're talking about. Both of you said is that it's a fair result, but I really feel like nobody should have gotten points from this game. I think that's what would have been the fair result, to be honest.
Hey, points. Hey, we'll take. You know what? Obviously, as a Liverpool fan, we'll take the points. Mistakes are obviously make me a little bit anxious watching Liverpool week in, week out. But hey, very much like the way Man U set up in their games nowadays, I feel like, and I've been crying out for this, Liverpool should be setting up in a similar way. Obviously, you have problems defensively, so why not drop the line, be more solid defensively, maybe change some players who are out of form and allow others to come in, and then obviously Liverpool get their chances a lot from breaks. Salah had a couple, Gakpo could have won it at the end as well, and so that's a lot of the chances where Liverpool will get them, and I'm just thinking if Klopp, I'm not sure he will do it. He hasn't done it ever since 2 seasons ago, where Liverpool were really struggling to get back into the top 4, even just dropping the line a little bit and playing more so on the break. But it was, I think, at the very least, nice to see Diogo Jota come back, getting some more minutes. Bisetic did start off the bench and then did come on, Roberto Firmino as well. And my only bright spot for now is that throughout this unsettling season, Harvey Elliott is still putting in performances and just getting minutes, because I think he's going to be an important player moving forward for Liverpool. And even though it's not the season, not the way he would wanted the season to go, getting minutes, getting to the first team and getting that experience, I think that's at this point the only bright spot for Liverpool. And see if you can make a push, because obviously Liverpool are playing Wolves in midweek. I think it's gonna be in a couple of days, and so games coming back to back. You have players coming back from injury, so you want as much rotation as possible and see if you can string a couple of wins in the Premier League, because essentially you're out of the Champions League. But Gio, what are your thoughts on that Liverpool Wolves game? Do you have a prediction for us, or how do you expect that game to go?
I think Liverpool should be quite worried. Actually, I think you can't really count Wolves out now that they've had a good, a decent run of form, I'd say, especially under Julian Lopetegui. So yeah, no, I think this is a different Wolves side that they've obviously faced earlier in the season, and I think, if I remember correctly, they dominated them. But again, yeah, you can't count them out now. Let me just quickly pull up Wolves' last few games. I think they were pretty good. They're starting to put the.
They won 2 of 5, and only lost 1 game in the last 5 games. Lost 1 game in the last 5 games.
That sounds good to me. They're picking up points.
2 of 5. I apologize.
Yeah, I mean, they're picking up points, whether it's draws or wins. Again, he said 1 loss in the last 5.
2 losses. 2 losses, 2 wins, and a draw. My apologies.
Okay. Yeah. Again, 2 losses out of 5. I think that's much better than what they were doing, early on in the season. So yeah, I don't think Liverpool is in a position to count any team out at this point.
Yeah, and especially those teams that are up and down, because Liverpool, as you said, you don't really know what Liverpool team you're going to get. And so to add on top of that sort of inconsistency, you don't know what the other team was going to put out. So I guess same question to you, Mac. Is this a good thing that Liverpool are getting games right after each other so that they can try to play their way out of the form that they're in? Or do you see them this potentially being a tougher game and potentially a negative result for Liverpool?
It's definitely going to be a tougher game for sure in some aspects because, as Joe had highlighted, Wolves are in much better form. At one point, they of course were last place in the league. They've kind of week over week through consistent performance under Lopetegui moved up into 15th, and I think that that's probably their trajectory where they'll probably finish closer to mid-table and then towards the bottom of the table at the end of the year. I think they're all confident that they can be a decent squad if they could finish. Of course, that's their biggest question. These bottom teams where they kind of lack that clinical ability to score. So I think that's going to be the big difference maker is that, yes, if Liverpool can help solidify defensively, great, fantastic, but are they going to be able to get on the score sheet in any sort of consistent way? Because right now that's been a little bit of a struggle. It's either they're leaking goals or can't score. So they need to figure out something there where maybe different avenues, different way of kind of movements, different kind of formations, different type of playing style. I know, Ray, you're talking about to drop the line back, but at the same time, if the main ability has been score on some sort of counter press, what's a different way, a different avenue for us to be able to take advantage of teams? I think they're still trying to figure that out. The good part is, let's all agree, in all likelihood, they'll probably only have this competition to focus on. So they'll give them a lot of practice time to be able to kind of zero in on this because they're still not completely out of a Champions League position if all things break even for them. So I think that picking up a positive results against Wolves would be a big step in that direction. But they still have to work on some things to kind of get close to there.
For sure, and Wolves obviously played on Friday, got that tie at Fulham, which they played, I think, quite well in. Fulham, I think, I think it was a well-deserved tie, but Wolves were, I think, showed a good game for themselves, and so it will be interesting to see how both teams face up this midweek. So let's take one last break here, guys, and then we'll be bringing back the most notable games and maybe some preview for the upcoming game. So stay with us. Welcome back to Hustle Footy, guys. We're just going to finish off today's podcast reviewing the remaining games from this weekend's action. West Ham 4, Nottingham Forest 0. Gio, what a result for West Ham. Obviously, not the season they've been expecting, but Declan Rice with 2, Danny Ings with 2, Declan Rice with a banger, and even Mikel Antonio getting in at the end of the game for his own goal. To sort of seal the game at the end. What do you think about that West Ham performance?
I think this is the West Ham we've all wanted to see. At least I wanted to see all season. This is what they're capable of, signing, players like Paqueta, Scamacca, players of that level. You spend that type of money, you want to see them perform at this level, albeit against Nottingham Forest, who's 13 in the league, which is a team that's higher than them. So, going into the game, obviously they know it's an important game. I mean, any game at this point in time is important for them to salvage points, and to stay out of that relegation zone or get as far away as possible. But no, I think we all talked about it as well. The veteran presence of Danny Ings being up top. Maybe Scamacca hasn't really hasn't been as acquainted to the Premier League just yet, and you pay that type of money to bring in Danny Ings, which wasn't much anyways, who's been in and out of the Prem and who has scored many goals in the Prem, to do this for you, to do exactly this for you. So no, I think I'm quite happy to see this performance. So hopefully they don't perform like this against Man U.
Great point. Exactly sort of what West Ham fans were, I guess, crying out for from their team. Mac, you mentioned that they had, I think in the last podcast, they have some favorable games coming up. And so obviously they would have wanted to pick up a win here. But, I mean, it could have been bad if they lost this game going into that sort of run of games coming up. So what do you think about this result? And is this sort of a catalyst to them now sort of moving themselves higher up the table?
I 100% believe it'll definitely be a catalyst for them because this team does not lack quality. If you put up the lineup that they have, Paqueta, Ings, Declan Rice, you have players on this team that are not just international level talents, but kind of some of the best countries in the world, international level talents in a lot of ways. So you want to be able to kind of give them the credit there, where they're probably in all likelihood, I think we can all agree, and most Premier League fans would agree, is that this just has not been the greatest run of form for them. They are kind of probably more of and very similar to a microcosm of Liverpool, where maybe the schedules over the last couple of years have just backed up so much, and some of these players are just kind of out of gas. And now they're just starting to find their legs. So this type of morale boosting home win against a team, I think it speaks to more than just the 3 points, more to just than the result, and puts them in a position now where we're like, you know what, hey, we're back to our old selves against these other teams that are kind of trying to be us these last couple of years, the Brightons, the Fulhams. We could theoretically be better than them. We maybe have more talent than them. We just haven't shown it yet. So this definitely could be an opportunity for them to pick up a lot of pace and kind of climb back up the Premier League table. With that just one result, because it's so clumped down at the bottom, they went from I think it was 18th to 16th. So they jumped up a couple spots already, and I think that they could keep soaring up there. Danny Ings, though, is absolutely, in terms of vital for them, because Scamacca has been injured, as Joe highlighted, in terms of not performing the greatest there. And Antonio goals have really kind of dried up thus far. So Ings, he knows this league in and out, so he should be very, very comfortable. I think, though, just to quickly add on, finally, is the last touch is Jared Bowen in this game looked very much like his old self. There's a lot of opportunities he created. Yes, he didn't get individually on the score sheet himself, but he was a catalyst for a lot of good things that they did in the kind of the final third, where he was taking these quick shots. He was trying to take players one-on-one, willing to take the risk to be able to create something for his team. So it was good to see him have a higher amount of energy levels than I've seen him in quite some time. So even though he wasn't highlighted here, I think that this might have been, funny enough, even though he didn't score, one of his better performances thus far this year.
Yeah, Jared Bowen has, I think, in the recent games been picking it up. So that's a very bright spot for West Ham in this sort of up and down season. But Gio, a player that I might have to give some apologies to, Declan Rice, with a banger that he scored in this game. I know, Gio, you might have mentioned him potentially moving on to a team like Manchester United. Personally, I'm still not convinced. I don't see him being all that amazing, but hey, prove me wrong, keep balling out, because if you do, you can get that move. But Gio, I guess, do you have a word for that screamer he scored?
Very, very, very nice. I mean, like, he has that capability to do so. Obviously from a midfielder or a defensive midfielder, for that, to have that type of capability is very important. And I don't know what team is best suited for him and his skill set. I think he wants to move to a bigger club. Whether he does or not this summer is going to be completely up to him at West Ham. But yeah, I think he's outgrown West Ham, I think, a little too much now.
So I personally think a lot of teams will be looking for his profile of player. So definitely see him fitting on a bunch of different teams. I'm not all convinced about maybe the potential of amounts that they're talking about. But obviously, hey, you're playing that well. The way he sort of celebrated that goal, it looked like a lot of weight off his shoulders, as well as all of West Ham. But Mac, did you have anything to add about sort of where potentially Declan Rice could be next season, or his performance so far?
It's interesting because he's the type of player where he's meant to be a shield for the back four, kind of drop into maybe split the defenders to help bring up possession. But he seems the type of player when I'm watching him play, he wants to get forward, he wants to be able to contribute into the final third, which is an interesting twist where the move that the place that he's looking and position he's looking to play and the type of role is something that we haven't seen him play consistently. So it'll be interesting to see that adjustment, what ends up working well for him there. Because in this West Ham team, that role is really given to Souček because of his ability in the air and West Ham's reliance on being able to create goals from crosses. And that's probably not Declan Rice's forte, where maybe in a more of a possession-based team, maybe he could show out a little bit more ability than he has in this West Ham team thus far. So I think definitely a lot of teams are going to go in from, he's an England starter, he's going to be a lot of money, he's definitely going to be overpaid. For example, just a couple of years ago, Oxlade-Chamberlain went for 40 mil there's going to be ridiculous money going to be spent on these English players. So I think that's going to be kind of consistent throughout. The interesting part will be is which team does he go to, and does he get the role that he wants, or is he going to continue the role that he's playing right now? I think that's the interesting part, because some of these options that he's looking at, they're very different. So he's an exciting talent, and I think I'm in the middle of excitement right now between you and Gio in terms of, could he go well? Yes. Could it go horribly? Yes. It's just, I think it really depends on situation and the players around him to see how successful he can be.
Okay, yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's move on and to a different game from this weekend. Leeds won a very, very important game against bottom of the league Southampton. Javi Gracia, the new Leeds manager, getting his first win. Really important as they now move themselves into 17th, just out of that relegation zone. Mac, did you have anything for us for this game?
My apologies, your voice got up there. Sorry, to which game?
The Leeds Southampton game.
The Leeds Southampton. So in that individual game, Southampton, I hate to bash on them, but they're just not good. I'll be completely honest. That win, which again further goes to show how bad Chelsea are, because they've lost to that Southampton team recently. I think to circle back around to there, Leeds were pressing this entire game. It seemed all but they kind of apply that finishing touch on a goal, and it kind of came one of the most scuff goals from Junior Firpo with his weak foot going right underneath the Southampton goalkeeper, and Bednarek watching like a statue as things were happening around him. So overall, Leeds, I think, deserved that win. They created a lot more opportunities. There was a couple situations in the final third they made poor decision, like Weston McKennie had a 2-on-1 with Brendan Aronson, and chose to pass it behind him for some strange reason. Not the greatest there, but overall, I think they had much more intent. They had much more kind of sauce to their performance, that they really had that ambition. And they definitely should have won this game. So I'm glad to see they did pull it out, even if kind of was a scuff of goals. And again, whenever I'm thinking about Southampton right now is, where does Jim Ward-Prowse go? That's the only thing that really comes to mind for me. But for Leeds, it's good to see them pull off a win like this, because that was absolutely a must-win game for them right now.
Yeah, for sure. Where will James Ward-Prowse play next season? Perhaps, maybe with Declan Rice on the same team, maybe at Aston Villa. I don't know, but anyways, we're going to talk about Aston Villa now, because they beat Everton 2-0. Gio. Everton were at home. They started the game well, but ultimately conceding two, I think, pretty decent goals to this Aston Villa team, who, Ollie Watkins scored now in his last 5 Premier League games, striker in red-hot form, and then obviously Buendia just walking around Connor Cody, him scoring 3 goals in against Everton in his last 3 Aston Villa games. Is this now another poor result for Everton, making the position now harder to get themselves out of the relegation zone? Gio, what did you think about that result?
Tough, because we were just giving them kind of more praise about how, they're looking a little bit more, more like a unit, and then you kind of new manager in Unai Emery, recently taking over that team, and then obviously Sean Dyche for Everton. But I think obviously Emery inherited a much better team. Also, Sean Dyche isn't, me personally, I don't think he's a great manager at all. So, with that combo, it just didn't seem like it was going to be, a good day for him. Everton, again, Aston Villa, we know how well they can attack. Their offensive abilities are far superior than Everton's. It was more so their defending, but again, Everton's lack of offense in general wasn't really going to fare Aston Villa by any means this game. So, and you can tell by the clean sheet, Aston Villa do concede quite a bit. So, when they can end the day off with a clean sheet, it's either they overperformed or the other team underperformed offensively.
It's very interesting that you mentioned themselves not being able to score. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, obviously another miss game, and a very big miss for Everton overall in this sort of season, where they're trying to stay up in the Premier League. Mac, what do you think about that result for Everton and Aston Villa?
So Aston Villa, I feel like it was much needed given their recent kind of run of games where they come out and win. Because I think if I recall correctly, they were kind of losers 3 in a row, so it was good for them to be able to pick up performance. And but I think this really goes to show, because for the first half of this game, in my opinion, Everton were the better team. They created a lot more opportunities. There was a lot of times when Dwight McNeil was doing his best Burnley impression for the last couple of years, where he was absolutely whipping delicious balls into the box, creating opportunities for his teammates, but they lack a consistent striker whatsoever. Neil Maupay had a couple great opportunities, and I think at one point he might have applied the best chest pass I've seen, and I watch a lot of the NBA. So it's just bad. It's if they had a Danny Ings, this team would be so much better, because that's the solar thing that they're missing. Because there are certain sections in this game where they're a team that can create opportunities. They can be strong enough defensively, but can they finish those to be able to get that lead where they can then go for Burnley mode, where they can sit back, where they can absorb pressure. But if the game's always 0-0, they still feel like, okay, you know what, we need to try a little bit more, and it puts them out of position. And of course, a team like Aston Villa has the capabilities to punish you there. So I think that's what's really missing for them. It's unfortunate. So it would be interesting to see if they do stay up, if that's an investment that they can make, or Dominic Calvert-Lewin comes back and performs as he did a couple years ago, but it's been quite some time since he was that player. So hopefully for them that they are at least able to scrounge up a couple goals to give credit to Sean Dyche defensively, of what he can provide, and structure-wise what he can provide for a team. But at least on the positive side, Aston Villa, it was great for them to pick up 3 points, something that was sorely needed to move them back in a position where they're not just kind of taking straight L's across the board. So good for them.
Definitely not something they want to do. And also to sort of catapult themselves to hopefully finish up higher in the table. But just lastly, before we wrap up the podcast, guys, Everton have a quick turnaround facing Arsenal midweek, given the run of form for both teams in the last couple games, and now with Everton confirming that Dominic Calvert-Lewin will miss the trip to Arsenal. Quickly, before we wrap up, Gio, your final predictions for that game?
Usually I would say some nonsense just to piss off Mac and say, Everton have a chance here. But Everton are going to get smoked. Arsenal don't make too many mistakes, and they're definitely not going to. I don't foresee them making too many mistakes against a team like Everton. Again, another side that can't create much offensively. If you don't have DCL, Sims isn't going to provide that for you. So good luck there. I think it's going to be quite fortunate for Arsenal that they are playing close games in proximity. To have a game like this as their first game. So they're able to rotate players in, to get a good run while being able to maintain fitness levels for, and fatigue levels of other players who normally log a lot of minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Mac, what do you think?
I think this should be a must-win for Arsenal. I think, especially after most recently played against Sean Dyche, and I think it was his first game coming back as manager, where Everton ended up winning 1-0. I think this is something that Mikel Arteta definitely had circled on his calendar, is that this is our revenge performance against them. And I think that this should be a position where Arsenal, though they wanted to try to do towards the beginning of the season, come out quick, come out early, and try to put that pressure on Everton right away, get a couple goals early in the first 15 minutes potentially, and be able to see up the game very comfortably. I think that's the type of performance they want, and to be honest, that's the type of performance I expect and predict for this game.
Thank you guys for those quick predictions. My prediction is going to be quick. I'm not a betting man, but I think Arsenal are going to put at least 5 past this Everton team. Ooh. I'm not a betting guy, but I think this is going to be Arsenal's biggest win of the season. Anyways, this concludes our podcast for today, guys. If you guys like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social medias. Our handle is @houseof_footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, get in touch with us. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. The next time you hear from us will be Friday, when we review the midweek games, and we also will preview the match week 26 of the Premier League. And on that note, thank you, Mac.
My co-hosts are gambling addicts.
Thank you, Gio.
Always take the over, folks.
And thank you guys for listening.